I've lived in three houses during my life. The first house was where I spent most of my childhood. The second was where my family moved when I was a teenager. And now I live on my own. But the strangest thing that ever happened to me took place during the final months we spent in that first house. I was 15 years old. My younger brother was 10. For as long as I could remember, we had two boys living next door with their father. Their names were Eric and Todd. Even though they were our neighbors, we barely knew them. In all those years, we'd only spoken to them once or twice. That should have seemed strange, but at the time, we never thought much about it. One afternoon, my brother and I were outside playing basketball in our driveway. Out of nowhere, Todd walked over. It was unusual because he never talked to us. The first thing he asked was whether it was true that we were moving away. I told him yes. My family would be leaving soon. The conversation felt awkward, but normal enough. Then Todd invited us to go shooting BB guns with him and his brother near the river in the woods the following day. I didn't have any plans, so I agreed. At the last second, my younger brother asked if he could come too. Todd shrugged and said yes. Then he walked away. The next day, about an hour before sunset, the doorbell rang. It was Eric and Todd. My brother and I answered quickly because our parents had no idea we were going out with them. The moment we stepped outside, something felt off. Eric and Todd were dressed head to toe in camouflage clothing. They were carrying a large duffel bag, and they looked unusually serious, almost military-like. My brother and I kept exchanging glances and trying not to laugh. The whole thing felt ridiculous. As we walked toward the woods, nobody talked much. The silence was uncomfortable. When we finally reached the river, Todd dropped the duffel bag onto the ground. Eric snapped a large branch off a tree and threw it into the water. Something about the way they acted suddenly didn't seem funny anymore. Todd unzipped the bag. ever happened to us. At the time this happened, I had just graduated from college. Like a lot of people fresh out of school, I was trying to make it on my own. The problem was, I couldn't afford to live in a nice neighborhood. So I bought a small house in one of the roughest parts of town. The neighbors on one side constantly blasted music at all hours of the day. But they weren't the ones who worried me. The neighbors on the other side were. Two women lived there, an older woman in her 60s, and a younger woman who appeared to have severe mental health issues. I never knew exactly what their relationship was. Mother and daughter, sisters, caretaker and patient. I honestly had no idea. All I knew was that something felt wrong. Whenever I sat on my front porch, I'd occasionally look over and see the younger woman having violent emotional outbursts. She would rock back and forth, scream uncontrollably, wave her arms around. Sometimes she'd suddenly point directly at me, then mumble things to the older woman while staring. The older woman would usually hold her back and try to calm her down. The whole thing made me uncomfortable. Sometimes I'd just go back inside because I couldn't stand being watched. Then one night things escalated. I had work early the next morning and went to bed earlier than usual. But the neighbors were louder than ever. The younger woman was screaming. The older woman was shouting back. Furniture seemed to be moving around. Objects were being thrown. The noise went on for nearly an hour. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of bed, walked next door, and knocked on their front door. Hard. A few seconds later, the older woman opened it. She didn't look happy to see me. "What the hell do you want?" she snapped. Trying to stay polite, I asked if they could please keep the noise down because I had work in the morning. The older woman stared at me, her eyebrows slowly raised. Then she tilted her head as if she couldn't believe I had actually come over. Before she could answer, the younger woman suddenly appeared in the living room behind her. The moment she saw me, she started screaming, "How dare you?" over and over again, louder each time. The older woman grabbed her and held her back before she could get any closer. Then she slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, confused, embarrassed, and wondering what had just happened. Defeated, I walked back home. But strangely enough, the noise stopped, completely. For the first time all night, everything was silent. I went back to bed, and eventually fell asleep. A few hours later, I woke up. Something felt wrong. I looked at my clock. 3 a.m. I let out a sigh of relief. At least I still had a few hours before work. Then I thought I heard something downstairs. A faint sound, almost like movement. I sat up and listened. Nothing. The house was silent. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. So I lay back down. 20 minutes later, I woke up again. This time, something had definitely disturbed me. The room was completely dark. The house felt different. Still, heavy. I reached over and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. But before turning on the flashlight, I froze. I heard breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. Inside my bedroom. My heart started pounding. Slowly, I scanned the darkness. Every corner. Every shadow. Looking for a person. Looking for movement. But I couldn't see anyone. Then I heard it again. Closer. Much closer. I turned toward the side of my bed and saw something. At first it looked like a black shape, almost like a shadow. Then I switched on my phone's flashlight. The light revealed a face. The younger woman from next door. Her head was right beside my bed, staring at me. The second the light hit her face, she let out a blood-curdling scream. A scream so loud it felt inhuman. I screamed too. Instinct took over. I jumped out of bed, ran for the door, nearly tripped and fell. And when I looked back, she was chasing me, still screaming, still reaching toward me. I slammed the bedroom door shut behind me, then sprinted downstairs. I locked the door leading to the upper floor and immediately called 911. The woman pounded against the door above me, screaming nonsense, laughing, then screaming again. It felt like something from a nightmare. Minutes later, police arrived. I explained everything. I told them the woman lived next door. I told them she had somehow gotten inside my house. And I told them I was afraid she might hurt someone. As the officers dealt with the situation, the older woman came over from next door. She begged the police not to take her away, but they refused, at least for the night. One officer eventually turned to me and asked, "Do you want to press charges?" As soon as he asked that question, the older woman looked directly at me. and the expression on her face chilled me to the bone. It wasn't anger. It wasn't frustration. It was pure hatred, the most hateful stare I've ever received in my life. I decided not to press charges. The moment I said no, she relaxed slightly, but the stare never changed. The police placed the younger woman in their vehicle and drove away. The older woman watched them leave, then slowly turned around and walked back toward her house, still staring at me. 5 minutes later, I watched her get into her own car and drive away. The entire neighborhood felt different after that. Unsafe, uncomfortable, and even now, those two women still live next door. Every time I see them, I remember that night. The younger woman terrifies me, but honestly, the older woman scares me even more. And lately, I've been seriously thinking about moving away. 5 years ago, my next-door neighbor Charles went through every parent's worst nightmare. His 14-year-old son vanished without a trace. The story was all over the news. Police searched everywhere. Volunteers joined the search, but they never found him. As the years passed, everyone slowly accepted the possibility that he was gone forever. My wife and I always felt terrible for Charles and his wife, Kathy. They were never the same after that. Kathy became quiet and distant. Charles seemed nervous all the time, but considering what happened, nobody thought much of it. Then something happened last week, something I can't stop thinking about. I was taking out the trash when Charles walked over and asked if he could borrow a shovel. Of course I said yes. I grabbed my best shovel and handed it to him. He thanked me and said he was doing some work in his backyard and would return it the next day. Nothing seemed strange about it at first. A little later, I happened to be upstairs looking out a window that overlooks his backyard. That's when I saw him, digging. Not a small hole, a huge one, the kind of hole that would take hours to dig. Charles is in his mid-50s. He looked exhausted, so I figured I'd help. I grabbed my second shovel and headed over. As soon as I stepped into his yard and called his name, everything changed. Charles immediately dropped the shovel and rushed toward me. No, it's okay, Tim. Just leave. His reaction caught me completely off guard. I told him it wasn't a big deal. I was only trying to help. Then he said something that still bothers me. I will not allow you to use that shovel in my backyard. The way he said it felt wrong. Cold. Almost panicked. Then he pointed toward the gate and told me to leave. So I did. But now I was suspicious. I went back inside and watched from my upstairs window. For the next 30 minutes, Charles kept digging. When he finally stopped, he began looking around at all the neighboring houses, checking windows, scanning rooftops, making sure nobody was watching. Then suddenly he looked directly at my window and saw me. I quickly stepped away. At that moment, I knew he was hiding something. No more digging, no activity. I figured he knew I was watching and was waiting until dark. And I was right. At around 1:30 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of metal striking dirt. A shovel. I looked outside. It was too dark to see anything clearly. So I quietly slipped outside and peeked over the fence. Charles was digging again. Faster this time. Almost desperately. Then he suddenly went back inside his house. I saw my chance. I climbed over the fence and crossed his backyard. The hole was open. I walked closer and looked down. At first, I couldn't tell what I was seeing. Then the moonlight caught it. A black garbage bag, partially buried, sticking out of the dirt. My heart started racing. I looked at the hole, then at Charles's back door, then back at the hole. Part of me wanted to uncover it. Part of me wanted to run. I stood there frozen, debating what to do. Finally, fear won. I hurried back to my yard, and it was a good thing I did. Only seconds later, Charles came back outside, but he wasn't carrying a shovel anymore. Instead, he walked around the side of his house and disappeared from view. I went back inside and crawled into bed without waking my wife. The next morning, the hole was gone, completely filled in, as if it had never existed. But something else caught my attention. Charles's SUV was parked on the street, not in the driveway where it always sat. I couldn't stop thinking about that black garbage bag. What if it was his son's body? What if he'd buried it years ago? What if he dug it up and moved it somewhere else during the night? I know it sounds insane. Maybe it is. But I can't shake the feeling. I haven't told anyone, not even my wife. And Charles never returned my shovel. In fact, he's avoided me ever since. Then yesterday something happened that terrified me. I looked out my window, And there was Charles, standing at his own window, looking directly into my house, watching me. The moment our eyes met, he immediately shut the blinds. And that was in the middle of the day. I don't know what was in that hole. I don't know what Charles buried. And honestly, I don't know if I want to find out.